starts, of course, by understanding that it's healthy and normal for a child to be resistant to sitting still and staring at a screen for many hours at a time. That's not normal. So even though it's highly inconvenient when our child does something that we don't want them to do, if it's within the confines of normal development, it's actually kind of a healthy sign. Because kids are meant to move, they're meant to learn by touching and engaging in a concrete way with whatever the material is. Of course, younger, this is more true than the older children. So the first thing is to approach the situation with more understanding and kindness, because we may be tempted to be feeling the pressure from the school. Your kids haven't been showing up properly. They're moving around. They're coming and going. And so the teacher or the school administration may complain to you. And therefore you may be tempted to sort of dump your frustration out on your child and scold your child and tell them they have to sit still and they have to try harder. And look at our neighbor over there, their child is sitting perfectly still. I would really recommend that we begin with compassion, and we begin with understanding that it's very, very abnormal and difficult for a child to sit and not be fidgety or want to move around. This is a healthy sign. So you might approach your child and say, let's come up with a plan together. I love that phrase. I notice that it's been pretty hard for you to sit still for your classes. Can you tell me about that? That's the first step. Just create the opportunity for your child to tell you their truth, to tell you what's going on without fearing your lecture or your explanations or justifications. When we create space for our children to feel what they feel and to get it out in the open where we can help them, that's a really strong indication that the parent-child relationship is doing what it needs to do, what it's supposed to do. So even if you're feeling pressure, or maybe you're afraid the teacher is judging you because your child seems to be the only one who isn't sitting still, and by the way, that's not true. Here in the States, it's the same problem. It's because it's hard. So I would say to the child, I notice that you've been having some trouble sitting still. What do you think we might do together to make it work better for you? Some of the things that I've been recommending to parents, we sit down with a child and say, what do you think would make this easier? What do you think would make it better? And some of the things that we've been recommending are, I don't know if you can have access to them, but there are these inflatable yoga balls, or there are these things called wiggle chairs or squirmy chairs where you put a little slightly inflated vinyl encased cushion on the child's chair so they can move. I recommend that they have something in their hand to fiddle with. There's stress balls, there's a rock, there could be a piece of bark, it doesn't really matter, but we know that many children need to be in some form of motion. There's a great line years ago, from fidget to focus. Now, I've also found it important for some children to just not be sitting down at all. So whether you put the computer in a standing desk, where they can kind of wiggle around while they're in the class. You can also get a webcam and put the webcam on the larger television set in maybe your living room, so that the child can see the class or the teacher, but they're standing up in the middle of a much larger space, and maybe they're moving around, maybe they're laying on the couch. I think that when we restrict and confine our children to a chair for many hours a day, it's just not a long-term option. So movement, manipulatives, and then of course breaks. And I've been recommending that you talk with your child's teacher. If your child is really struggling to stay focused and sit in that chair for extended periods of time, the teacher may want to know that and may want to build into their curriculum each day more frequent breaks, even if they're very short, maybe every 20 minutes when it's a concentrated session. The teacher says, okay, everybody, let's all get up and do this 3-minute dance party. So that the teacher needs to be informed. They need your feedback so that they can support the efforts that you're making. So it starts with not judging our kids, not shaming them, not scolding them, but rather accepting that this is normal and healthy. And then collaborating with the child, you introduce some ideas for how they can engage with something, touch something, stand up, have more breaks, move around, and and understand that this is, we're not aiming for perfection here. We're aiming for the child to attend most of the time. And once in a while, you might actually need to contact the teacher and say, can we have a double extended lunch break? Or can my son or daughter come in, a little bit later, leave a little bit early, where I want her to have a good attitude, but I can see that things are starting to fall apart. It's already enough to be working from home and overseeing your children's schooling. And then if you've not gotten into the routine of making dinner, shopping, cleaning up, tidying the house, doing the laundry, we start with recognizing when something's pretty much impossible so that we can lower our standards significantly. There's a great quote: lower your expectations, you'll achieve more. So I know that can be in conflict with our internal makeup. We may have very high standards, both of cleanliness and of our own accountability and level of care and attention that we are used to devoting to our clients and our work life. And of course, for our children, we may expect them to achieve a certain academic level of performance. So all of those things are on hold right now. And I like to see life in certain respects as a school. Now, we don't always sign up for the classes that we're taking. In some cases, we get shoved in the door of a classroom. Here, you're going to learn how to be more tolerant, how to be more accepting, how to be more respectful toward yourself and not burn yourself out by trying to do far more than one human being can do in a day. So whatever the class or the curriculum that you're exposed to right now, for many of us, there's some universal themes, but it's also individual, because for those of you who are kind of perfectionistic, then your lesson is going to be how to relax, how to accept that you will not achieve this mark. It's just not conceivable. And, in the same way that when a person needs eyeglasses, you don't just yell at that person if they don't have their glasses and they can't see something at a distance. You don't say, just try harder, right? You recognize that there's an inherent limitation that has to be worked with, that has to be acknowledged and supported. So if it means, for instance, that you juggle this, you allocate time, and maybe for many parents, I find that a structure or a routine can be quite helpful, that you say, okay, in the morning, I get up, I make breakfast for everyone, and then we all have 15 minutes of tidying up the house. And make it fun, don't make it heavy. And this is the mistake that a lot of parents make. They're so heavy about everything and so serious, and everything is so important. And if you put on some silly music and say, okay, you guys, let's have we'll call it the jam party, and who can find the most things to pick up off the floor, who can get the most dishes washed and dried, so that it becomes a little bit lighter. And then you start your school day, and you might have a structure. And I know some parents are finding that their kids, depending on the child's age and ability to manage themselves, might say, okay, you're going to work for 45 minutes and I'm going to go work for 45 minutes. If it's urgent, you may slip a note under the door where I'm working or knock gently. But my hope is that you'll wait. And if you find that, especially with a young child, that's too long, then it might be 30 minutes. The other way, of course, is that you segment your work obligations and you say, I'm just with my kids, they need my supervision. And then either we turn them over to someone else for a stretch of time so I can have an uninterrupted time working, or if you have a partner, you switch off. And so you can be creative about it, but I think that it starts with really lowering your standards, and you can sit down and have a family meeting. I think this is really, really valuable. It often will happen, let's say on a Friday night or a Sunday night before the week has begun, or as the week comes to a close. Always make sure that there's something fun scheduled after the meeting. So it could be movie night or pizza night or dance party night or board game night. And so you schedule the meeting. You always want to start by acknowledging and appreciating every member of the family. So everyone appreciates everyone else. I really like that you went for a bike ride with me today. Thank you so much. You were so great with the puppies when I needed your help. So everyone feels that whoever they live with in this family has acknowledged or noticed something that's kind and appreciative about them, positive about them. And then you might say, well, I have this big pad of paper, this big flip chart, or this big whiteboard, and let's talk about what our schedule is going to be like for the next week or two. And the kids can collaborate with you, and they can come up with ideas of things that they can do both to help run the house, because I strongly believe that children should be helping. And that might be unusual too. They might not be used to that if they've had a lot of help in the house, but it's quite healthy for them. But also they can come up with maybe a list that they can keep looking at when they can't have your attention. So this is a list of activities, not just on the screen, that they can do to occupy themselves when you're still on that call. And it's always good when you're going to go into work to try and let your kids know when you'll be available to them again, but sometimes you'll need to stretch it out. You can also have a nice basket of things that they have access to when they really can't figure out what to do on their own. And these are things that they don't see on a daily basis. So you can have like a special basket that you slip outside the door if you're still working. But I think, again, it starts with lowering your expectations, working collaboratively with your children, and really kind of acknowledging your successes. I got through today. Nothing completely fell apart, so that's a plus. It's important to understand that we cannot force someone to be motivated. We can entice them. We can create incentives. We can dangle a reward in front of the child. But you can't force someone to feel anything. You can't force your child to feel excited about finishing their history lesson. So we have to start with that. When we judge our children or lecture them or shame them because they should care more than they care about a subject, they should be trying harder just for the sake of the privilege of having an education, that doesn't tend to work. We know that when you come at someone, they tend to push back. I've spoken at parent groups all over the world. I've done events from every part of the world, except India, frankly, where I want to come. But, I'll bring someone onto the stage and I'll say, okay, would you put your hands out against mine? So imagine that there's, both of their palms are against both of mine. And I don't tell them what to do, but I just stand on the stage and I start pushing against them. Well, what do you think they do? They push back. And I point this out. I say, did I ask you to push? And they say, no. I said, everybody does it. Everywhere I go, this is the instinct. So the idea here is that we push against that which pushes against us. When you come at your children, why didn't you turn in that assignment? How come you can't try harder? Why aren't you as motivated as your brother? All they can do from the inside is that instinct is going to be to push back, to defend themselves, to get angry, to feel depressed and less than, and start to feel a lot of internal turmoil and stress, or to lie. I mean, we set our kids up quite often to not tell us the truth, because the truth may be, I hate that class, I hate the teacher, and I don't want to do the work, it's really boring. But of course, what most of us do when our child tells us the truth is we say, well, that's a terrible attitude. If you would just apply yourself, you would do well. If you would try and find the good in it, And so they learn, don't tell mom or dad what my truth is, because they're just going to shut me down. We want to break that pattern. And most of us grew up with that kind of parenting, where our parents told us what we should do, what we should feel, how we should move through the world. And, we are trying to change some of the patterns. So I talk about coming alongside our kids rather than coming at them. And coming alongside means it looks like you're having a lot of trouble staying on task and getting your work turned in. I would love for you to tell me about that. And the child will test you and say, well, I don't know, I've been doing most of it. And if your response is, well, it doesn't look that way, sweetie. It looks, from what I've seen, it looks like half your assignments are missing. Now, if that's what you do, be prepared for the lawyer, the back and forth, the pushing. That's not true. The teacher hasn't been registering all my assignments. I've turned in all but 2, and here we go. You guys know where that goes. A lot of deception, a lot of questioning, doubting, lack of trust, indignation that you're not being believed, or the child might feel that way. You know, how dare you? You always side with the teacher. You never believe me. You don't trust me. You don't want that. So, you know, if the child says, well, I've been turning most of them in, you say, oh, wow. Well, it seems like the portal isn't up to date, the place where your assignments are getting logged. But more importantly, it does seem like you're having a hard time being motivated. I would love to hear more about that. And then again, the most powerful words, tell me more. So if you can prove to your child that you're not going to pounce, you're not going to attack, you're not going to defend, shame, scold, lecture, and they say, well, the work is too hard, or I don't enjoy it, and you don't come in with that lecture that you're tempted to give, then you might say something like, well, thank you for telling me. It's hard to hear that you're not enjoying it. I, of course, wish you were, but I want to hear all about it. Can you tell me more? Yeah, the teacher's mean. She hates me. She never calls on me. The work is too hard. It's so boring. Now, again, you might be tempted to say, well, if you just saw, you know, it was fun for me when I took that kind of material, whatever. Like if you don't do that and you say, so, and sort of repeat, validate. So it sounds like the work seems pretty hard and you don't really feel very connected with the teacher. If you do that, your child is going to be very surprised. Wait, what? What's going on here? This isn't what mom or dad usually does or says. Huh. So they might risk telling you a little bit more of their truth. The more the truth gets out in the open about what is behind your child's lack of motivation, the more you can help her. If you keep closing that door on the opportunity for her to tell you, this is what's going on, I don't like it, it's hard, it's confusing, the teacher's not fun, the teacher's mean, the more you can hold back from defending or, you know, interrogating your child. So there's also the issue of feeling like you're not doing as well as some of your friends, and that makes it harder also. You might say that to your child. Yeah, I feel like it's always easy for them and it's really hard for me. Great. And then you might say something to your child, thank you so much for telling me. I'm honored that you would trust me with what's true for you. I want to know it all. So this is the way the conversation might unfold. And then when we look at motivation, I find it quite helpful to do something called the multiple intelligence test, which was a test designed by Dr. Howard Gardner. Dr. Thomas Armstrong has also written extensively on this. He's written many, many books. He and I have done some classes together on multiple intelligence. But you can take this test for free online, the multiple intelligence test. And it will help you get clear for everyone in your family who takes it, which type of intelligence is strongest for you. So there's verbal linguistic, and these are the kids who are strong in reading and writing. And that tends to be one of the 2 subjects that school most focuses on. So there's verbal linguistic, there's logic mathematic. So these are the kids who do really well with mathematics, geometry, and all of that. They might go into engineering. Now those 2, verbal linguistic and logic mathematic, if you're good naturally, strong in those 2 forms of intelligence, one or both, you're going to find it easier to stay motivated. The schoolwork's going to be easier. You're going to get more pats on the head. You're going to get more praise. But it's just because you happen to be born with those strong intelligences. There's also visual, spatial intelligence. These are the artists, the designers. There's body kinesthetic. These are the athletes, the dancers. There's intrapersonal, so the introspective child, the reflective child. There's interpersonal, the one who can create friendships. There's the naturalist. There's musical intelligence. So when you take the test, then you discover what your child's strong suit is, and you look for ways to motivate the child through their natural gifted orientation for engaging with the world. Preschool children have no problem being motivated as long as they get to be who they're supposed to be, which are engaging in a physical, practical, interactive way with the world. So the issue of
So,
motivation shouldn't really be relevant for a 3 or 4 year old. It's really going to be more 7, 8, 6, 7, 8.